Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 31, Working with Contractors and the Big Box Store Spreadsheet. I know the last couple of weeks, if you've been tuning in, you've been hearing a lot about the sponsorship of Lending Home, which I've been kind of doing a little self-promo commercial on. I don't want to do that again today, but I just want to keep it in the back of your heads that I am making great advances on finding opportunities for funding for investors. So if you have any interest or you're in need of funding, which if you're anyone like me, you're always looking for funding, please visit us at tanisfunding.com. That's www.tanisfunding.com. All right, let's get back to the show. So today I want to talk about working with contractors and what I call the big box store spreadsheet. I'm no genius. I'm no expert. I've been doing this a long time. I've done different aspects of real estate as far as buying at the foreclosure auction, buying online auction. Actually just closed on a property last week via online hubzoo.com. For those of you who aren't familiar, pen that down, hubzoo.com. You might be. That's actually a very large amount of property that is owned by one single bank, which is Aquin.com. They manage all those properties and sell everything through their online platform at this point. They do list them on the MLS as well, so they're not impossible to find. It's no super secret tip, but just another thing to keep on the radar if you're looking for more assets. Back to the point, though. So I have flipped houses myself where I've swung the hammer. I even did a 9-unit apartment building at one point, me, myself, and one other guy who was kind of like my laborer, if you will. Did the whole project, took me about a year. Not very smart, but I've done that part of it. I have hired general contractors to completely manage an entire project from start to finish, including having them even pick the color of the countertops. And then I've kind of settled into something which I'll call a little bit more of an in-between status. Right now, typically when I'm working on a project, I'm hiring some type of contractors to do the majority of the work, and then on occasion I might get a little bit more involved myself, but I'm more management of the day-to-day type stuff. These guys typically aren't making decisions on finish. They are not providing any type of supplies for these properties. So I am physically involved in that part of the process, whether it be going to, your local big box store, and I'm going to use that term throughout this podcast, which stands for Home Depot, Menards, and Lowe's. I know there's probably some other options out there, but that's what we have in our area, and those are the places that are offering the best discounts right now. And we're going to get into that a little bit too, how to work with those stores. But so, I just spent the last 2 days or so assessing this most recent rehab, which is going to be a rehab for rental that I just acquired last week off Hubzoo. Incredibly fast closing. I'm actually pretty impressed with their platform. I've heard good and bad. I've also purchased from them in the past, but it's probably been over a year, and also in a different community. And that could be part of it, city requirements for closing, things like that. But I'm pretty sure from the date the contract was executed to the day of closing was literally 7 business days. I mean, it was less than a week and a half. It was almost so fast I didn't have a chance to kind of wrap my head around things to get prepared to kind of put together my scope of work other than what was already in my head. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today is working with contractors, the scope of work. So let's start with that. Before you even have a contractor look at one of your properties, I would have a plan in place to some degree. Now, I understand that there's going to be things that the layman or the inexperienced investor or even the experienced investor aren't going to be able to identify that a contractor would. So I don't see anything wrong with an investor walking a property with their contractor and helping them make those decisions, or having the contractor help you make those decisions. But one of the concerns I do have is that they steer you in a direction that you don't necessarily need to go in. And there's all types of different contractors out there. Like I said, if we're gonna give them the general term, and that's going to account for the good and the bad ones, and the generals and the subs at this point, unless I specify differently. So, for example, I don't ever really want to deal with a contractor that's going to be scaring the inspiration out of me or any clients that we work with. Some of these guys are kind of doom and gloom. I know there's a funny commercial on TV right now where the guy's kind of sitting at the kitchen table with the couple, and he makes a joke about like, "Oh yeah, and we'll be sure to delay this project." And the couple nods their heads and go, "Oh, of course, yeah, we can't get this done on time." No, that's not really how it should be. But there are guys out there that are giving you worst case scenario stuff, and a lot of times their pricing probably comes in higher than some of the other guys. That to me is a key indicator that I should not be working with them. Number one, because they're scaring the wits out of the client, whether it's myself or an investor. Number two, because they probably don't want the work. They're going to come back and give me doom and gloom about a property and make me feel like it was a bad buy. I get it. Like, of course I've made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. This is a learning process. I'm never going to stop learning. I screw up every day. Trust me. I do. I want somebody in my court that understands what my goal is and appreciates the fact that I'm able to purchase a property and provide work for them. So let's come up with a solution. Let's not just find the problems, right? So to start off, find contractors that you feel comfortable working with on all levels. If you're just getting started, I would recommend you see a property prior to getting a contractor involved. Just start getting your head in the game. Check out as many properties as possible. Start penning down what your perception of the scope of work is going to be. This is a great piece of advice I give to a lot of newer investors that I personally feel is, if I had a training course, this would be session one. This would be your first quarter project. Show me a list of all the properties you looked at in the first 3 months of going through the Joe Mueller training program, which, full disclosure, there isn't one, but a lot of the new investors that come to us, that's what I tell them. Let's go look at some properties. Go talk to some other investors at some meetups and get inside their properties. See what they're doing. Formulate how they came up with whatever their plan was. Work alongside them a little bit. Spend a couple hours with a guy who's going to be visiting, or gal who's going to be visiting one of his projects. All great ways to learn. And then go look at properties so you can get an idea of what it might take, or what you think it might take, to fix a buckled hardwood floor. Or, this house needs an entire roof. Start getting those ideas floating. If you know what? I don't expect you to know unless you've got some type of background in construction or roofing. Shit, I don't even know half the time. But what I do is I look at the properties, I walk them, I take photos. I always carry a flashlight with me. Most of the time I carry 2 flashlights. Sometimes I'm seeing them at night or early in the morning. I check out all the cracks and crevices and pockets of these houses before I even consider, making a decision. And I will tell you, I probably make a decision on whether or not I'm interested within the first few minutes of even pulling up at the property. I've got my idea on valuation. Your door jam CMA, I like to call it. What's that property going to sell for? If I flip it, what's it going to rent for if it's a rental? So all those processes can be part of your systematic way of initially evaluating properties, values, rentals, and then look at the property and figure out what you think it's going to need. There are people that are a lot of, Mr. Fix-It, honey-do list type guys and gals that might have a little bit more knowledge, so that's great. But you still need to see a lot of properties, and you need to have the open concept in your brain that there's going to be differing opinions. And that's part of this learning process. And there's always a way to overcome obstacles. So that said, number one, write this down besides Hubzu is, walk a ton of properties and start knowing what the ins and outs of them are. Look at the furnace. Don't take it apart. You don't need to flip any switches. Just have an idea of what you're looking at. If you can't find it, figure out where it could be. Sometimes furnaces are in attics. Sometimes furnaces are in crawl spaces. Sometimes they're in basements. Even out here in the Midwest, we've got wood-burning furnaces that are out in the yard that have radiant heat lines, water lines piped underneath the house that keep the house warm. So get your hands on that type of thing so you have a good understanding of how it works. That way, when you are actually going to make the move and buy one of these properties, you've at least got some exposure to what the potentials are. And I know, again, people are probably listening thinking, well, yeah, I don't know what I don't know. Exactly, you don't. But you've at least seen something. So you're not walking into a property blind. You've seen a good property, you've seen a really bad property, you've seen the middle property, and maybe it even helps you create that comfort level of what you're looking for. I think that's really what it comes down to, is you need to be comfortable with making decisions on rehabbing these properties. And yeah, the first one, maybe it shouldn't be a gut rehab down to the studs, needing all new plumbing and drain lines and an updated electrical panel and pulling, in Illinois, Crook County, we've got to put conduit and everything, the piped electric. That's all high-end not high-end, but that's expensive stuff. I mean, maybe the lipstick on a pig deal is better served for you. Now, is it harder to find the lipstick on a pig deal? Yeah, because everybody's looking for it. Everybody wants an easy flip or an easy rehab to rent. So just keep looking, and they are out there. So let's move away from that topic. You need to go out, you need to see properties. You need to start jotting down what you've seen, take some photos, put a little memory bank together, save it in Dropbox, whatever. I mean, that's what I would recommend. Properties seen. Create a folder, then create an address. So you can at least have some type of point of reference. That way, when you have an opportunity presented to you where maybe you do have to act quickly, you can make a better educated decision. Because what are you going to do after you've gotten home and let's say you've seen 2 or 3 properties over a weekend with a broker or however you've come across these? Sit down, evaluate what you've looked at, maybe ask some questions. Start looking for options on contractors. So that's my next topic I want to talk about is how do we find these guys or these gals that are available to do the work for you? I've heard Craigslist as a resource. Personally, probably not a place I'd be looking. I'm not going to say that myself and Eddie down in the south suburbs of Chicago, we've actually found some contractors on Craigslist. That's because the pool out there is a little bit different than what maybe the average person is looking for. I mean, Craigslist is a very effective way of marketing business. So, depending on where you're at, that might be a great resource. I can tell you I personally don't really use it. I would say it goes back to the drum I love to beat on, which is networking. Anytime you talk to anyone and they happen to mention at the water cooler that morning that they're having their house painted, get the painter's name and number. Ask some questions like, how is the job done? Is he working quickly? Does he show up on time? Are you happy with the result? Just a couple simple questions. And come on, we're all people. Everybody loves to talk. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. I even have a podcast where I'm talking about myself. I mean, come on. Everybody loves it. So ask a few questions. Anytime you're in any type of social setting, you'd be surprised how many opportunities you can get on creating relationships with contractors just off that. That doesn't mean it's the best contractor, but it's a start. Another option I would recommend is brokers, real estate brokers. A lot of times brokers are down to the wire trying to get their big, little, or fat commission check, in their pocket and get something closed. And what happens when a property is about to sell is, boom, something goes wrong, or the home inspector brings back a punch list of BS that needs to be fixed. And I am saying BS for all you home inspectors out there. But I understand you got to tell everyone what's wrong with the house. Just stop killing deals. Anyway, so talk to brokers. I'm sure all of you, every single person listening to this podcast, knows a broker. I can even guarantee it because now you know me. Now, I'm not going to hand you a list of contractors on a silver platter necessarily, but there's some guys that I've worked with that maybe are doing different jobs in different areas or whatever the situation is. Real estate brokers have a natural tendency to be tied into some type of relationship with contractors. If the guy you know well who happens to work at your local crappy Remax, doesn't have any contractors because he's probably a crappy broker anyway, working at a crappy Remax. Yeah, just kidding. Not really. Then call around. I mean, go look at some houses, call up some brokers, go look at stuff in some different areas, and you're creating those relationships. You will find some people. Start putting together a list of contractors. Simple. Make a spreadsheet. I don't care if ABC Painting isn't your first choice. Have them down on a piece of paper because you know what? When you do find a painter that you're more interested in working with, you need to get multiple bids. That's going to be what we're getting into next on this podcast. Multiple bids. If a guy gets comfortable or a gal gets comfortable working with you, the price is probably going to start to creep up. That's just the way it is. Either it's because they know they can get it from you because they know you're the only guy, or gal they know they can get it from you because they know they are your only guy or gal that's doing the work. Or if they're starting to creep up, maybe they don't want to do the work anymore. I mean, I can't tell you what the mindset of a contractor is, but I can tell you that some of them just don't want to do some of the stuff that needs to be done on these houses. Some guys enjoy framing out houses and throwing up drywall. Other guys want nothing to do with it, but love doing baseboard and shoe and, crown molding. I mean, it's just the way this business is. Start creating a list. You need somebody that does flooring, tile, hardwood. You need somebody that does windows. You need a roofer. Hopefully the roofer's doing gutters and soffits and window wrap. If he's not, find more people and have a few of them in your back pocket. A real life example, I'm working with one of our investors right now, and she'll know who she is if she listens to the podcast, which she says she does, but we'll see. We're going to find out in a week or two. She's been working with the same guy that I recommended to her like a year ago. And now she's starting to get a little bit frustrated with the fact that his pricing seems to be a little higher than she'd like. Well, I asked her just last week, I said, have you bid him against anyone else recently? She's like, no. Well, you said he was a guy giving me a good price. I'm like, well, yeah, he does give good pricing, but maybe he knows he's also the only guy that you're hiring. Maybe those prices get an extra couple grand tacked on top of them. This is business, people. Supply and demand. He's the one in demand. So he's going to raise his price if he thinks that that he's the only supplier. Does that make sense? Have a list, bid these people out competitively, have them run into each other at the same time. Whatever you want to do to play those types of games, I say it's all fair game because money is money. It's your money at the end of the day, or you and your partner's money, however you're structuring your deals. Now, that said, we talked about looking at houses. We talked about finding contractors. We talked about the bidding process. Let's talk about the scope of work. Scope of work is a word that you need to burn into your head. You have to have that plan, which is all part about looking at those houses in advance and getting an idea of what you'd like to see. When you're looking at an unfinished handyman special versus a finished rehab project, what needs to go on in your head to make that project work and to make some money? That doesn't mean you need to be putting crown molding in every room and updating every mechanical element of the property and just putting siding on a house because you think it would look better with a different color. What that means is, coming up with that plan cost effectively in order to make money. So you have to understand what elements go into a property and the construction process. So that's why we're doing this podcast today. The scope of work, it should start with what you see right in front of you when you walk into those houses. Does it need new flooring? Can I salvage what's there? Now, I wouldn't recommend, we're not going to get into the finer details of completing a rehab, but if you've got vinyl flooring from 1995 in there, then yeah, you probably need to cover it with something else. Throw down some laminate, throw down some Allure, which is a product I love that's only sold at Home Depot, and this is not a Home Depot plug, but great product for rental properties. I put it in a lot of my properties. Is there existing hardwood? Is there hardwood underneath the carpets in some of these rooms? At least in the Chicago area, we've got a lot of old housing stock and a lot of new housing stock. If it's original, actual old oak hardwood underneath flooring, I'll do my damnedest to try to get that stuff exposed again and refinish it. A lot of times you just got to tear up what's there. The most recent project we just started on, there was 3 bedrooms with carpet. All I had to do was take a knife and pry up a little bit of carpeting just to see underneath with my light, and I could see that there was hardwood underneath. Boom. Simple fix at that point. Now, instead of worrying about what my floor finishes are, I know hardwood throughout. Hardwood throughout. It's already there. Look for those opportunities. Cabinets are a big one with me. Make a decision on whether or not you need to replace the kitchen cabinets because they're moldy and they're falling apart, or are they salvageable the way they are? There is a lot of ways that a good painter can turn, a POS old cabinet into a nice, finished, brand new looking product. I'm not recommending that that's the key for every deal, but if it's an opportunity, depending on what your exit strategy is, then it might work. If it's a rental, why wouldn't it work? If they can make it look brand new again with a nice white color, shiny white, or maybe the gray tone is popular in cabinets right now, why not give it a shot? You'll save money. Instead of spending $2,000 on new cabinets, maybe you'll spend $750 or $1,200 on refinishing them. I think that's an option. Same thing with countertops. There's guys out there now, those guys that are doing that bathtub refinishing, surround sound, boom, hello, surrounds and bath refinishes. I know one of my guys that does that for me, he actually now does countertops and cabinets because it's essentially a similar concept. He's putting a new covering on something that's old and making it look new again. So, that'd be a contact I'd have in my Rolodex if I were you. Have a bathtub refinisher, and if he doesn't do counters and cabinets as part of his gig, then maybe keep looking. And when I say that, so everyone's clear, I mean, when these countertops are finished, he is spraying on, multiple coats. They look brand new. They're shiny. I mean, he makes them look like granite. Now, they're not granite, but they look pretty darn good. Again, saving you some money. So I don't want to get too much into the detail of those types of relationships, but, do you think you need any type of carpentry or structural work? Do you need to move a wall, add a wall, close up a room, close up a doorway because the bedroom happens to have two of them? I mean, whatever that is, you got to have some carpenters. You got to have people that are experienced in the finish work. I mean, that's the key to a lot of this stuff is what it looks like when it's done. So I know all you weekend warriors are excited about grabbing your chop saw and grabbing some baseboard and cutting some miters and, using your pancake compressor and shooting some finish nails. I mean, yay, that's fun. But that might not be the best result for your rehab property. You might want to hire someone that does it for a living. Have those guys ready to go. That comes back to my original point with the scope of work of this section of the podcast. We have to have a plan. And if you're going to be using any type of hard or soft money lending, unless it's like your typical Fannie Freddie calling, your Zach Carp, ZK mortgage guy that's going to be financing you at whatever percentage down through conventional methods, I mean, you're going to need some type of a plan. Even a private lender, most times, if you're getting lenders from family, friends, or contacts, whatever, I mean, they're going to want to know, most of the time they want to know what you're doing with the property. So you need to have an idea. Start documenting those plans. I carry a very small, I'll call it a notebook, but it's actually like a small book, almost like a diary. It's like 8 inches high by 4 inches wide. It's leather bound, and I just keep it with me at all times in case an idea comes to mind or, I'm brainstorming something. I would recommend something like that, whether it be a notepad or your iPad, your phone, voice memo, whatever you're doing. That way you can start putting these ideas down together. So I start writing down what I'm seeing when I get to a property. What do I think it needs? Because the last thing you want to do is have to run back to a property that you want to make an offer on because you forgot the condition of the roof, or you never counted how many windows need to be replaced, or how many outlets were there, or if the panel needs to be upgraded, or what type of flooring was in the bathroom and if it was salvageable or not. Start documenting this stuff, create some processes on your side. That way, when you grow your real estate business, you've got a system in place. So the scope of work, typically, if you're going to be working with a hard money lender or even that company that I've been recently, sponsoring for is Lending Home, at tanisfunding.com, you have to have a plan. They're going to want to see what your plan is and how much it's going to cost. You don't necessarily have to tell them who's doing the work. It could be you. You might be a contractor. But if you're going to be borrowing money from some type of hard money lender or private lender, whatever it is, you're going to have a scope of work. So if you have any questions on what that may look like, I would try Google as an option. Probably some overcomplicated versions are online. I can send you a sample scope of work on how it works for a property. But all the major and minor components, all the way down to, we'll be replacing door casing and 5 interior doors at, $120 a piece or whatever that cost is. Now, I understand your next question is, because I just brought up the key word, whatever that cost is. Well, if you really don't know what it's going to cost, then yeah. Now, the second time you come to a property, bring that contractor through there, maybe before you're willing to write your offer up, get an idea of what those items are going to cost. Any contractor that gives, it'll be $5,000. No, I need to know. I don't need an itemized report down to the nail or the screw or the light bulb, but I need a pretty good idea of what that work entails. If you're going to charge me $5,000, I need to know what goes into it. Who's supplying certain materials? A lot of times drywall guys, they supply all their own drywall, tape, mud. Okay? Their own equipment to install drywall. Ask them, what do you charge per sheet to install a sheet of drywall? Maybe you don't get a straight answer. Maybe they just give you a flat amount. You got to start with what you have to work with, but you can still utilize that for a scope of work, and you can add that into the scope. And that also works on the lending side as well. That impresses the lender, makes them feel more confident and comfortable with the deal if they're able to see that you actually did your homework. And this is all part of it. I mean, I know we all watch the late night TV shows and HGTV and Property Brothers and Tarek and Christina. Hot topic right now. Good for the pool boy. Anyway, but that's not necessarily, that is not the real world. You have to do homework if you want to make this a business. You have to spend time evaluating these parts of the business. Everybody has this pillowcase dream of how they're going to be picking their favorite colors to put on this wall and have this wonderful gray accent wall in the living room, and what type of chair rail they saw at, Home Depot last week. That's awesome. But that's not the important stuff at first. You need to figure out what needs to be done to get to that point. So don't necessarily focus on, don't think that this is going to be something that you can just walk into without doing some homework. And homework is meeting with contractors. Homework is doing some self-education, spending your own time on figuring out what stuff costs. You'd be surprised, I'm sure you wouldn't be if you're listening to this podcast, what you can find online, what Google can provide for you. You can pretty much break down to the area of the country. There's websites out there. It'll tell you what it costs to get, a home sided that's X number of square feet, for example, or flooring, what the average cost per square foot should be if you're going to refinish hardwood, things like that. Do your homework. I'm trying to get you guys an idea on something to work on before you're ready to actually jump on that property. So when you do jump on it, not only do you know what to look for, you know what you have some ideas in your head, you're able to put together and formulate some type of scope of work. So then you can speak like an educated investor when you talk to these contractors. Of course, I don't know if a furnace needs to be replaced right off the bat. I mean, if it looks brand new and it smells brand new and there's a sticker on it that says it was installed 3 months ago, I would think it doesn't need to be replaced. But some furnaces are 10 years old, they look like they're 3 years old, and some furnaces are 3 years old, they look like they're 50 years old. So you need to have somebody that's going to evaluate this stuff with you, but at least you have a general concept. Every time I deal with heating and air, I hire a guy to come out, check it, clean it, just do a once over, and they find little stuff. Sometimes it costs $50, sometimes it costs $150. Sometimes they're just replacing a filter, and it's the cost of the trip. Not a big deal. But think about these things as you're putting together your scope of work, and maybe plan for it. If it looks obvious, at this point you've already seen 10 houses, you've seen 10 furnaces or heating components to a property, you should be able to determine whether or not you think you need to get somebody out there to replace it, or maybe just take a look at it. I think that's a fair statement. So once you've got your scope of work put together, you've probably got a contractor you're working with, you're walking through these properties. Here comes the important part, the bid. Dealing with the bid process. Contractors are incredible people. They're businessmen sometimes, and sometimes they're not. They're great workers sometimes, and sometimes they're not. They know what they're doing, hopefully most of the time. Sometimes they don't. So you need to get multiple bids on any project. You need to look at how different these bids are, and they need to be apples to apples comparison. So when you show up at a property, I would schedule 2 to 3 contractors within the same day, spend a couple hours there. One's coming at 9 a.m., one's coming at 10 a.m., one's coming at 11 a.m., or whatever your time frames are. And describe to them the same scope of work for what you're looking to do. And yes, they're going to point out different things. Again, you're always learning, right? They're probably going to find an issue with the drain line in the kitchen sink when they flip the water on and they say, oh, well, I think this pipe is leaking. Okay, great. I didn't notice that. Add it to, jot that down in your little 8x4 book. Make notes and get a general comparison so you can sit down with these 3 bids and look at them side by side and come up with, if everyone's in the ballpark, are they providing appliances? Don't forget about appliances. Some contractors, they don't want anything to do with appliances because some people want, a Samsung fridge that has an iPad built into it that tells you, what time the Hawks game is on. And some people just want your bland white, whatever Frigidaire brand fridge. And the contractors don't want to get in the middle of that, so they don't quote those prices. But what you can get is the cost of installation. How much is it going to cost? Can you put the stove in for me? Can you put the washer dry in for me? Can you hang the microwave for me? Can you move the fridge into the right spot and plug it in? Whatever. keep all that stuff in mind. Get those bids side by side. When I've had a bigger project on my plate, I've actually entered all 3 bids into a spreadsheet. And I'm no Excel wizard, by the way, so, I figured out how to use a microphone and press record on a computer. That's about it. I am no wizard. But what I've been able to open up Excel and start typing in costs and descriptions of work that needs to be done and how many items of this, that, and the other, and look at these things side by side. Because that's the next step after you've got your bids is compare them to each other and then start asking the contractors where that cost breaks down. If one guy's going to charge you $2,500 to install, a kitchen floor and a bathroom tile floor, and the next guy's only charging you $1,200, why is that? Does that include the tile? Are you choosing the tile? Is he choosing the tile? Is that labor only, I guess, is what I'm saying. Where's those cost differences? And I'm not saying you need to beat the piss out of these guys, but find out what you're paying for up front. That way there's no misconception later on. There's no disappointment on either part. There's no one walking off jobs or getting fired from jobs. Because the real name of the game is creating a successful relationship that you both can make money on, right? They have a business, you have a business. Now, next step. Do you pick the guy with the lowest bid? Do you pick the guy with the highest bid? I don't know. I've heard, go with the middle guy because he's somewhere in between and he's probably the most honest. And, maybe the guy with the lowest bid is undercutting to try to get the job and he's a little desperate. Maybe he's going to cut some corners. He just needs more money or he needs money now. Maybe the high-end guy got more expertise, but you're not looking for like the Taj Mahal finish necessarily. That's why I really look at those bids, and then ask for references before you make your final decision. Ask for references. Ask for proof or evidence of the jobs they've completed. Have them take you to whatever they're working on. I mean, if they're so busy that they couldn't meet you until a Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m., then they're working so much, then go see where they're at. Go see the type of work that they've completed. Ask to speak to a couple clients that they've done work for. I don't see any problem with that. If they're not willing to offer that to you, then take them off the list. Unless they're just starting out and you happen to know, friend of a friend who's an awesome painter and now he wants to become a professional painter and you want to give him a shot, get some references. This is all simple common sense stuff. So write that down, references. Last way to kind of solidify your contractor selection process is talk to other investors. I brought it up earlier, but when you go to your local meetups, go to your REHAB groups, get in front of the room, people. Speak. Have someone speak for you if you don't like being in front of a crowd. I understand. I don't like it either. I still do it. Hey, my name's Joe. I'm looking for a roofer in Chicago because I have a brick bungalow that I need a new roof on. I also need gutters or whatever. If anybody knows anyone that they've been happy working with, please let me know. And then always have your business cards ready, people. So talk to other investors, talk to other people. Even if they're not investors, sometimes there's contractors in the room. Shit, one of my best guys, and I know he listens to this podcast, he turned into an investor. That's awesome. Good for him. Kind of sucked for me because, then I had to kind of get other people to do other work. But it's a learning and growing process. I'm actually glad that happened because now I have a better understanding of what my capabilities are, looking at these properties and making decisions on figuring out what needs to be done. So talk, open your mouth, speak, find somebody, talk to people. It can happen. So we'll go back to the bids. You've chosen your guy now. You've got a couple references. You've got some good results. Maybe you've seen one or two of his completed projects or projects he or she's in the middle of. Let's talk about the payment process. Raise your hand if you think it's okay to just pay them a check up front of the full amount of the balance. Put your hand down. No, not a good idea. Always set up a payment structure, a schedule, and make sure you're both 100% clear on how that schedule is going to work. Maybe a down payment, 50% through the job, final payment, or break it up into 4 payments. You don't get the 4th payment until the job is 100% completely done, not 95. Not, they forgot to put in that little piece of shoe right there. 100%. And I don't want to insult any awesome contractors out there, but let's be real. Every now and then, people forget something, or maybe they're, like me, I forget a lot of things, which is I have my little book that I have to write everything down in. Stuff gets missed. I call a lot of people the 95 percenters. And I'm okay with the 95 percenter as long as they're willing to go back and finish to 100%. And I hold them to that. Don't feel bad for telling a contractor that there's more that needs to be done because that's what the original agreement was. And maybe he comes back and says, no, we didn't talk about me changing out every outlet cover. We never discussed that. And you say, okay, fair enough. Well, it needs to be done. So how about I throw you another $100 or $50 or whatever to do whatever that item is, get the jobs completed. I mean, that can be frustrating as an investor, and that's something that you need to keep in the back of your head is you're going to have those 95 percenters. You're going to have things that need to be cleaned up, looked at, reevaluated. Sometimes they forget to do things. Just be prepared for that being part of your business. If you have somebody that does 100%, that's awesome. Good for you. I'm totally ecstatic that you found that person. In my experience, nobody's 100% all the time. Okay. So now you've got your guy. You've decided on a 4-payment structure plan. Here's the second part of paying contractors. Go review the work completed before you cut the check. Please. Go take a look at the quality that's being done. The first payment should basically be for materials and to get them started. I mean, I can't tell you an exact number. There probably is some formula out there. I don't have it, but it needs to be reasonable. You know, if they need to buy materials or they got guys that need to start doing labor, then yeah, pay them the first week or two or whatever. Get that going. But don't cut any more checks until you've seen what's going on at the property. I hear a lot of people on Bigger Pockets and a lot of investors that are doing like remote investing. That's awesome. I'm going to do the whole my head's exploding thing right now. How they can do that? I mean, I guess GoPro cameras, YouTube, Facebook Live, recordings, photos, all that stuff. I mean, that's possible, but there's still stuff that can be overlooked. You need to see what's going on at these properties before you keep paying these contractors. Now, when you're making payments, something that you need to consider and use all the time is a lien waiver. If you don't know what it is, Google it. I'll send you a copy of what one is. A lien waiver is basically a document that states that the contractor is unable to lien the property because you've paid him what he is owed or her what she is owed. You have to use lien waivers, okay? And I'll give a little anecdotal story when I'm off this point. And then make sure include everybody on that job, whether it's a general contractor that you've hired or subs or both, are all signing those lien waivers. Can it still be a problem? Sure, potentially. Like the guy might tell you that ABC Heating and Air is the one replacing the furnace, and you get a lien waiver from ABC Heating and Air, but wouldn't you know it, he got a better price from CDE Heating and Air, and he used them instead, which shouldn't happen, but I'm just telling you, it could happen. And maybe you don't have the right lien waiver. You got to be prepared for that stuff. You got to have a lien waiver from the general contractor as well as the guys. Second part of that paperwork aspect is you got to get a W-9 from these people. Whether you're an LLC or a sole proprietor just getting started, get a W-9. Have written documentation of what their FEIN numbers are, their socials. You don't want to be you don't want to be punished because when you're 5 projects in and you're using the same guy over and over and it turns out you've given him $100,000 in income that year, the IRS will probably come looking. So these people are going to need 1099s at some point. I don't want to get too far into that topic, but lien waivers, W-9s, simple. If they don't want to sign either of those, consider looking for someone else. If you're getting the greatest deal in the world, somehow, way, shape, or form, and you want to make a calculated risk assessment and say, okay, well, damn, this guy's like 50% less than the other guys that I've used before or whatever, then maybe you might be willing to take a chance, but I'm not going to recommend it. I think you need to get a lien waiver and a W-9. Okay. So my little story is I had a project out in Chicago, a little further from home. I'm in the suburbs. This was in Chicago. Had my 3 bids. One of them was a guy I'd used in the past for like 3 or 4 rehabs. Another guy was somebody I met at a meetup who literally was working the entire Midwest, like in 5 different states or something crazy. I don't even know how he did it, but whatever. Some people can pull that stuff off. And one guy was a local guy. Turns out the local guy was the middle bid. So I compared him to we'll call him Contractor A, who I've used 5 times, who's also based in the suburbs. So I was a little concerned about the logistics of him working, 50 miles away every day. or an hour drive every day. I asked him, I compared the two. I said, hey, do you think you can help me out with this price a little bit? I got this other guy who came in, $5,000 less. This is like a $50,000 job. I mean, it was a bigger rehab, roof, gutters, soffits, all the windows in this property replaced, a lot of demolition, hardwood floors, tile, cabinets, counters, the whole package. So it was a $50,000 job. I'm trying to cut a little bit here and there to see where I can save some money. So I used the middle guy. The middle guy had references. The middle guy had pictures and documentation of previous jobs he completed, to the point where he was like literally gutting 3-unit buildings downtown in Chicago, like down to the studs and replacing floor. I mean, from shell to finished 3-flat type stuff. I was impressed. His pricing was pretty good. I was able to shave off a couple $1,000s by just talking to him. All things you guys should do. Here's a key word that Dan Clarton has taught me. Key phrase. Is that the best you can do? And wait, don't say anything. Is that the best price you can give me? Right. Okay. I would almost guarantee 95% again, you're going to get something shaved off. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Again, you make a risk assessment calculation on what you want to do. Well, this particular guy I had never worked with, but again, it came with a reference, came with some completed project documentation. I did not physically go look at the projects like I just recommended that you do. I just sometimes don't have time for that. But maybe that was my mistake, because in the end, my 6-week project turned into a 6-month project. He couldn't keep subs. He couldn't keep his guys showing up there. He said he had other projects he was working on. He was already, he already got his, we were on a 3-payment structure, so he got his initial down payment. I went and checked everything. Looked okay for, the first few stages of a project. But 6 months later, I'm still chasing this guy down to literally get like a closet rod installed or a closet door or a doorknob fixed. To me, that 95% became a big pain in the butt, because it was also, logistical for me. It was far away from where I'm typically rehabbing and where I live. That said, I ended up finally getting him to complete the job, and that took several more trips from me, because I wasn't going to pay him his final check until everything was done. End of story. And this guy, well, I don't care how many projects he had or how much experience, he ended up being a problem for me. He was begging for money, telling me how he needed the money, yada, yada, yada. This guy would run to the bank and cash those checks so fast. I was like, yeah, something doesn't feel right. I knew before we even finished, I never wanted to work with him again. The quality of work on a 1 to 10 scale was probably like a 6.5. And again, I'm not asking for freaking 11 out of 10 stuff every time here, but come on, give me an 8, give me a 9, give me something I can work with, finish the freaking job. Well, again, I'm being long-winded, but everything was fine. I got rid of this guy. I was happy to see him go. I rented out the property, and I'm making a good cash flow property in the city. I typically don't touch those areas, but it was a great buy on the front end, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity. And 3 weeks into the tenants living there, they take a picture of a business card and send it to me. Well, it's ABC Construction saying that somebody owes them money. Never heard of this guy, wasn't listed as one of the contractors, didn't have, initially I was getting copies of insurance from this general contractor and the contractors that were going to be subcontracting on the job. Just like I said before, lien waivers, W-9s, things of that nature. Well, you don't need a W-9 if you're not paying a sub directly, but if you're paying a general contractor who's going to be the guy collecting all the money, then you need his W-9. So let's clarify that. So he basically hired somebody, I didn't know about it. The guy's claiming he's owed a couple grand. Well, guess what he did? He filed a lien on the property, people, and there was nothing I could really do about it at that point, because then it turns out that the general contractor, he's basically skipping out of town. He got me. You know who you are. He got me good. I needed to resolve the situation. I didn't want to lien on the property. I didn't want a problem with this guy. Now, it's Chicago, man. There's like how many millions of people here? I mean, I just want to be able to refinance my property and keep it as a rental. Well, guess what happens if I refi that property? I got to pay off that lien. Again, it was only a couple grand. So I called the guy up. I said, hey, I got burned. You got burned, man. I'm like, how do we make this work? How do we resolve this situation? I cut him a check. So that couple grand that I saved up front ended up getting spent on the back end because this jackass didn't pay his guy. That stuff happens. Be prepared. Even the best of us are going to get hosed every now and then. So I think that I've covered that topic pretty well, and I ended it on a negative note, but you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. You need to stay on top of these guys. Like I said, that project 6 months later, I'm still checking it. Like, I think 1 week I was there 3 times just to see if this guy had freaking put in some closet rods and doorknobs. I mean, it was ridiculous. And the kicker of it all is, when I looked at his final invoice, I realized that there was a couple flags on there. One of them was hardwire smoke detectors, $250 a piece. Well, thank goodness I took about a jillion pictures of this property because I was about to list it for rent. And before I cut him the final check, I realized, I thought, I don't remember seeing hardwire smoke detectors. Those are pretty obvious. They don't look like your regular go-to, Menards cheapo $10 smoke detectors with a 9-volt in them. They're hardwired into the property. They're mounted a certain way. They've got a red light or a green light that's typically always on or always flashing, so you can identify those items. Well, he had budgeted, I think it was 3 or 4 of those at $250 a piece. That's $1,000. So before I cut the final check, I went through everything on all of the invoices and made sure it matched up to the original scope of work. And then I went through the property again to make sure exactly what he said was done was actually done. Because that was the red flag to me. I'm like, well, wait a second. No, there's cheapo $10 battery smoke detectors in this house. He's charging me $250 for one of those. I'm like, hell no, that ain't happening. So I called him up and I said, listen, dude, I got a problem with some of this stuff. I'm like, you said you put in hardwire smoke detectors, and you didn't. He goes, oh, yeah. Well, the city didn't require it. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. I'm like, you said you were putting in solid slab doors, solid core doors, and those are hollow core. I'm like, not a big difference in price, but hey, there's $50, $60, $70 a door. Well, when you got 7 doors, that adds up. So I was able to shave off another couple $1,000s from this guy before he got his final check. And of course, this was before ABC Construction showed up asking for the money that never got paid. So I got rid of the general contractor, and then I had to deal with the secondary contractor and make that lien go away. Is this stuff preventable? Yeah, it is. Building good relationships, working with the right guys, vetting the guys out, giving them a chance to take on your projects, but don't be surprised when that guy you found on Craigslist burns you, or doesn't get the work done, or sends you photos of the same wall over and over when he's supposed to be at, drywalling the whole house, and you just happen to see that it looks like the outlet's in the same place on every picture because he's really not doing jack over at the property and he's asking for more money. Go check the work. Make sure it's getting done. Don't be stupid about it. I mean, this is all stuff that I think as you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, we get it. But again, it never ceases to amaze me how often that happens to investors, how they get burned. Now, next topic. We're going to change gears a little bit. Working with the suppliers, the big box stores. And I have to give credit to everybody in my circle here, my networking circle, that has helped not only myself but each other grow their business and save money by working with the right suppliers. Whether it be a lumber liquidators for flooring, or Home Depot, Menards, or Lowe's for your general materials. Create relationships with these stores. Go in there, tell them what you're doing, tell them you're a contractor. You're probably going to have to open up a credit card or some type of account line. That's all stuff that you can do and you should do, especially if you've got a newer LLC or even an established one. Establish some business credit. Throw it all in the name of the LLC or the business. I know I just had a conversation with one of our investors the other night. He just started his first LLC. I'm totally pumped for him. And the next thing he was thinking about was, so should I go open an account at, the big box store? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, you might not get the 25 grand you're looking for, but maybe you'll get 5, maybe you'll get 3. I mean, that's something to get started. Pay those bills. And typically those come with discounts. And we go back to the phrase that Dan Clarton taught me. When you're standing at the register at the contractor desk of Lowe's or Home Depot or Menards, whoever your point of contact is over there, make sure he's there, whether it be the manager or one of the sales guys or whatever they are. Be like, hey, is that the best you can do? because these guys are all in competition with each other. Menards, they're 11% off sale. They'll match it at their other stores. You can typically get more than that off of these projects. I know, like I said, I want to give credit where it's due. So Chris Davis and Dan Clarton both introduced me to the manager over at the local Lowe's in our area. And this guy, inevitably we are all saving money because we brought more business to them. We're all spending money at that store, and we're all able to save more money because they're making more money. So keep that in your head. Now, the second part of that is, how many of you think that it sounds awesome to spend your entire Saturday or Sunday walking through the aisles of Home Depot? Okay. Well, I didn't hear anything back, but I don't. If you do, kudos. And maybe it's your first project or your fifth project, but at some point, that's going to be a time pig. Picking out baseboard, picking out, paint colors. Start systematizing your business. And one simple recommendation I'm going to make, and this is exactly what I did, and this is not expensive, is the first time or the next time you rehab a house or you buy a bunch of materials, whether, I don't care if it's doors, trim, tile, thin set, Durarock, windows, light fixtures, light bulbs, whatever, take the receipt, go home, and enter it all into a spreadsheet. Now, the cool thing about this is, what I recommend, go on Fiverr.com. If you don't know what Fiverr is, Google it. Fiverr is awesome. It's like the $5 VA system, and it's not like your typical VA. It's people that are in, U.S.-based that are looking for like side work. Sometimes it's just data entry. There's even people on Fiverr that'll transcribe the podcast, word for word onto a document if I wanted to write a book about this episode. That might not cost me just $5. So typically the way Fiverr works is they give you some type of service for $5, whether it be, I will transcribe 5 minutes of audio onto a Word document, whatever, and that costs $5. If you've got an hour-long podcast like this one, that might cost you a little bit more. I wouldn't be paying more than like $25, but I'm just saying. Take that receipt that you got, scan it in the computer, email it over to somebody on Fiverr, and have them enter it all into a spreadsheet. You need the quantity, you need the SKU or the item number, you need a description of what it is, and you need a link, a hyperlink. And I say that because all these stores are online. And if they're not online, I would say find another store possibly. But if you go on to, Menards.com and you type in the item number or the SKU that was on that receipt, boom, it pops up. It's a closet light. It costs $7.49 plus tax. Now you have a picture of it, have it linked back to your spreadsheet. So you've got this online living document. I know you're probably thinking, okay, well, that's great, but what do I need that for? For the IRS guy? Yeah, maybe. No, I'm thinking, think ahead. Create a system for your next project. There's no reason that you should be reevaluating every style of light fixture when you go to the store and you pick out a couple and you know what you like. And now you have this spreadsheet that happens to have 100, 200, 300 items on there that you can not only see the price of, you can click the little link button on, hyperlink in your spreadsheet, and boom, you're on your computer, all of a sudden it pops up the Home Depot website, and there's a picture of the window that you bought. Oh, duh. What size faucet or what type of kitchen faucet did I get on that last project? Do I really want to drive back to Home Depot and stand in that store for another hour and pick out a faucet? Well, yeah, maybe some of you do. But you need to create a business. You need to have a system. Take whatever you bought before, reevaluate it. You've got the picture. You know how much it costs. You can then even take that same item and maybe do a little cost comparison to the other box stores. I'd recommend having 3 separate spreadsheets. I'm saying 3 because those are the 3 stores around me, as Lowe's, Home Depot, and Menards. But however many of those stores are near you, create a separate sheet, know what they are, and use it to beat up the other guy. If you feel like the best deal you're getting is from Menards, but maybe you get a couple items at the depot because they're cheaper, make a comparison and bring it into them. Talk to the guy behind the desk at the contractor counter and say, hey, but you know what? Here's a great example. The lighting at Menards, light fixtures, cheap. Say what? The cost of those fixtures is so cheap at Menards compared to the other stores, it's amazing. Use that to your advantage. If you want to buy from Home Depot, but Menards has the best lighting, and you want to do your entire order from Home Depot, and you really don't want to go to Menards, then tell it to the Home Depot guy. Be like, yo, bro, I need like 7 of these flush-mounted fixtures, and you guys charge $20 for a 2-pack, and Menards charges $11. Like, how do we make this work? I mean, maybe that's a small example, but start building and documenting those items in those spreadsheets, and it's going to help you. The key to this whole topic that I'm going to wrap up with here in a minute, is it helps you systematize to make your business more efficient. I have a spreadsheet. I upload my receipt on Fiverr every time. They send me back a spreadsheet. I take that, I copy and paste it I make them even put the little links in there, okay? So I pay a couple bucks extra than the $5 on Fiverr. But for, one receipt, I might spend $10. And they're going to take the 50 items that were on it. They're going to put it in a spreadsheet. I copy and paste it into my master spreadsheet for that big box store. And then now I have everything I bought. I know exactly what it looks like because it links back to the website. I know exactly what it costs. And that way when I go to my next project, I go, well, yeah, this is going to be another rental. How about I just put in the same kitchen faucet and the same bath fixtures that I did the last time? Why wouldn't I? If it's brushed nickel and it looks good and it was a good price, no reason to reinvent the wheel, do the work all over again, and stand there in the aisles for 3 hours on a Saturday. So, that said, if you have any questions about how that could work for you, please feel to reach out for me. Joe@TanisGroupLLC.com is my email. Joe, J-O-E, at Tanis Group, T-A-N-I-S Group, LLC.com. One way to reach me. If you have questions, you want to see what I've done, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you guys. We're also working on putting together another question and answer podcast session from all the investors that, kind of come to the meetups and networking groups. If you have a question or a concern or wonder how to do something or whatever, shoot me an email. Let's talk about it. Let's put it on a podcast. Thanks again for spending the hour with me today. Rock on. Investor Empowerment Series rules. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investoремpowermentchicago.com or TanisGroupRealty.com.